Welcome to the latest episode of Employment Talks, a Lydian podcast aimed at providing listeners practical insights into pressing employment law topics in Belgium. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 7th episode of Employment Talks, a Lydian podcast aimed at providing listeners practical insights into pressing employment law topics in Belgium. Employment Talks is a Lydian podcast. Lydian is a full-service Belgian business law firm with a practical and personalized approach to practicing law. Through a fine blend of transactional law expertise and litigation skills, we deliver straight-to-the-point solutions that add true value. We think client-focused, we act fast, and we speak frankly in a language that you understand. From our offices in Brussels, Antwerp, and Hasselt, our mission is to find solutions through excellent legal insight and strong business Welcome instinct. to the latest episode
That
of
is how we
Employment
exceed
Talks, a
expectations,
Lydian podcast
deliver
aimed at
consistent
providing
results,
listeners
and
practical
forge
insights
long-term
into
relationships
pressing
with
employment law
industry
topics
leaders.
in Belgium.
Counting 17 lawyers, Lydian's employment, pensions, and
Hello,
benefits team
everyone, and
is the
welcome
largest
to
team
the
you will
first
find in
ever
any
episode
independent
of
Belgian
Employment Talks, a
full-service law
Lydian
firm.
podcast aimed at
We take
providing
pride in the size
listeners
of our team
practical
because of
insights
the
into
responsiveness
pressing
it allows us
employment
to
law
bring to our
topics in
clients
Belgium.
every day. But even more
Employment
so,
Talks is a
we're
Lydian
proud of the
podcast.
expertise that comes with it.
Lydian is a
All
full-service
17
Belgian
lawyers,
business law
from
firm
associate to
with a
partner level,
practical and
advise
personalized
clients on
approach
general
to practicing
employment law
law.
topics
Through
from
a
the
fine
start
blend of
until the end
transactional
of
law
the employment
expertise and
relationship,
litigation
and
skills,
everything
we
in
deliver
between,
straight
both on
to
an
the point
individual
solutions that
and
add
a
true
collective
value.
level.
We think
Additionally,
client-focused,
every
we act
lawyer has
fast,
specific
and we
fields
speak
of
frankly
interest,
in a
ranging from
language that you
privacy, health
understand.
and safety,
From our
pensions and
offices in
benefits,
Brussels,
to internal
Antwerp, and Hasselt,
investigations and
our mission is
international
to find
employment.
solutions through
My
excellent
name is
legal
Kato
insight
Aerts.
and
I'm a
strong
partner
business
in the
instinct.
Employment,
That
Pensions
is
and
how we
Benefits
exceed
Department of Lydian,
expectations,
and I'm
deliver
delighted to be your
consistent
podcast
results,
host.
and forge
Today,
long-term
I'm meeting with
relationships with
Katrien
industry
Coenen,
leaders.
Senior Associate in our Employment,
Counting
Pensions and
17
Benefits
lawyers,
practice for over
Lydian's
7 years
employment,
and based
pensions,
in
and
our office
benefits
in
team
Antwerp.
is the largest team you
Katrien
will
is
find in
dedicated to
any
helping
independent
businesses
Belgian
successfully
full-service
navigate
law
their
firm.
workplace
We
employment
take
issues
pride in the
with a
size of our
particular
team
interest
because
in
of the
working time.
responsiveness it allows
Last
us to
month,
bring
the
to our
Social
clients
Inspection
every day.
Services opened an
But even more so,
investigation
we
into
are
the
proud of
Flemish
the
public
expertise that
radio
comes
and
with it.
television broadcaster
All
after 3
17
employees
lawyers,
published
from
an
associate to
anonymous
partner
open
level,
letter
advise
regarding
clients
toxic
on general
leadership,
employment law
harassment,
topics, from the
favoritism,
start
and
until
bullying
the
within
end
the
of the
high
employment
ranks of the
relationship,
organization.
and everything in
In this
between,
episode,
both
we
on an
want to touch
individual
upon what
and a
employees and
collective
companies
level.
can do when being
Additionally,
confronted with
every
toxic
lawyer has
leadership.
specific fields of
Katrien, can you
interest,
please enlighten
ranging
us?
from
Thank you,
privacy, health
Kato.
and
I'm happy
safety,
to be back
pensions and
here.
benefits, to internal
It can be said that
investigations
toxic
and
leadership has
international
been a
employment.
buzzword in recent
My name
years.
is Kato
From the
Aerts. I'm a
university
partner
to
in the
amusement
Employment,
parks in
Pensions and
Belgium,
Benefits Department of
allegations
Lydian,
of toxic
and I'm
leadership
delighted
pop
to
up
be
in
your
news
podcast
frequently.
host.
And it is
Today,
surprising
I'm
to see
meeting
that
with
despite
Sarah
the tools the
Witvrouw,
Belgian legislator has
associate
put
at
in
the
place to
Employment,
avoid and
Pensions and
resolve
Benefits
problematic
practice at Lydian,
situations at
and
work,
based in our Antwerp
these
office.
situations tend to go on
Sarah
for
has been
years
with Lydian
before
for 2
employees
years
ring
and
the
a half.
alarm bell.
Her expertise
For
spans
instance, in
individual
Belgium,
and
every
collective
employer should have a
employment law.
prevention policy in
Last
place
year, she was
aimed
involved
at
in many
ensuring the employees'
matters
health and safety
related
at
to the
work.
EU
And
whistleblowing
one of the
directive,
components of such
during which
prevention
she
policy
developed
is
particular
psychosocial
interest
risks at
and
work,
expertise in
which
relation
includes
to this
violence and
topic.
harassments or other
Sarah,
conflicts
welcome on the
between
podcast.
employees in
How are you
general.
today?
Very
And
good,
different
thank you.
means
A
of
new
action
year
are
and
available
the
for
first
employees who
episode
believe they
of a
have
brand
been
new
harmed
podcast.
as a result of
I'm
toxic
really looking
leadership.
forward to the episode
As
of
such,
today,
the
as
law
I
provides for
find
an
the
internal
subject of
procedure
whistleblowing
as well as
very
an external
interesting.
procedure
And
for the
I'm feeling
employees to
happy to
follow.
share some information on
And
this
to
topic.
initiate these
Perfect.
procedures, employees
Let's
can
dive into it
turn
then.
to the person of
Could you
trust
perhaps
or the
explain to
prevention
us
advisor
what
for
is
psychosocial
a
risks at
whistleblower?
work.
A
Their names can
whistleblower
easily be
is
found
a
in the company's
person
work
in a
rules,
work
and you can
environment
contact them via
who
phone, email,
detects
letter, or even
fraudulent
personally
behavior
at
within
work.
the organization
It must be possible
and
for these
decides
employees
to
to
blow the
consult
whistle in
with
good
these
faith.
persons during office
This very
hours.
act on
10 days
itself
after the
puts the
first contact,
whistleblower in
the
a very
employee should be heard and
vulnerable
informed of the
position
possibility to
towards
reach a
and
solution
within
via
their
either an informal
organization.
intervention
A proper
procedure or
protection
a formal
is thus
intervention
required.
procedure.
If the
In case of a
whistleblower
request
could
for a
not be
formal
protected,
intervention, the
he or
prevention
she would
advisor will
not
first
dare to
determine
speak
if the
up,
request
and
is
no
mainly
one,
collective
not
in
even
nature
within the
or
organization,
individual in
would
nature.
become aware of
And
the
this will be
fraudulent
important since
or
different rules
non-ethical
apply to each
behavior.
type of request.
And that is the very
If the
reason
description of
why
the
it is in
situation on toxic
everyone's
leadership
interest
shows
to
that other
create this
employees within the
framework of
company may
protection for a
also be harmed by
whistleblower.
the situation,
Companies often
the
want
risk
to
will
be
be of a
aware of
collective
such
nature.
behavior,
In this
and the better
event, the
protection
prevention
will
advisor will
enhance a
inform the
speak-up culture
employer of
in
the
the
request for
organization.
intervention without
That's
disclosing
very
the name of
clear.
the
And
complainant.
could you perhaps also elaborate a
Disclosing
bit
their
on the
name
legal
will only be
framework for
required if the
whistleblowing?
prevention advisor
Of
deems it
course.
necessary for the employer to take
As most
preventative
companies
measures
will
to ensure the
be
well-being
aware
of this
of, a whistleblowing
individual
directive
pending the
was adopted
investigation.
on 23 October
The requests
2019,
relating to a situation of a
providing
collective
minimum
nature
standards
should be
for an
further handled
enhanced
by the
protection of
employer,
whistleblowers.
who must conduct a
It
risk
provides
analysis and take the
a
necessary
protection
collective
against
measures to
retaliation
resolve it.
measures and the possibility to
If,
file
however, the
claims for
situation
damages
of toxic
if
leadership
whistleblowers are
described by the
retaliated
complainant
against.
relates to facts of
The deadline
violence,
for
harassment, or
implementation of the
unwanted
directive
sexual
was
behavior
17
at
December
work, the
2021.
request will always be
This
treated as a
deadline was,
request of a
however,
mainly
not met by the
individual
member
nature.
states, including Belgium.
Specific rules will in
But
this
in the
event apply,
meantime,
given the delicate
legislation
nature
has
of this
been adopted in
complaint.
Belgium,
In a nutshell,
and
the
we
request
are
will in
going
this
to
event be
talk
handled
about
by the Prevention
the
Advisor
Whistleblower Act
and
of
not the
28
employer.
November 2022
The Prevention
for
Advisor
private legal
will investigate the
entities.
specific
This
work
is the most widely
situation,
applicable
hear all
legislation
persons
and
he deems
therefore the
useful,
most
and
relevant
prepare a
one to
report for
talk
the
about
employer
on this
suggesting
podcast.
certain measures to
In
resolve the
general,
issue.
there are three ways to
If the
blow
issue
the
is
whistle.
not resolved
The
after
first
the
one
internal
is
procedure
via
has
an
been
internal
completed,
channel
the
within
employee can
company.
file a complaint with the
This is what
social
we are
inspection
going
on
to talk
welfare,
about
the
today.
public prosecutor,
Secondly, you
or file
can
an
blow the
action
whistle
before
via
the
an
employment
external
tribunal.
channel. That will
Thank you,
be
Katrien.
an
Even with these
institution
measures, I can
appointed
imagine that
by
not all
the
employees
Belgian
have confidence in the
legislator.
internal
And
procedures put in
thirdly,
place
via
when
a
the toxic
public
manager has
disclosure.
far-reaching influence in the company.
Okay,
Can the
thank you
employee
for
directly
explaining those
choose the
three ways
external
to blow the
procedure?
whistle. And
The employee can
probably
indeed
our
decide to
listeners
go
would
to the
want to know
social
more about
inspection
that
service
internal
or the
channel
labor
because that
prosecutor or
relates
the
to
employment
obligations for
tribunal
a
directly.
company. Are all
However,
companies
there are no
required to
reasons to
install such
assume
a
that the
channel?
internal procedure is
Not
biased
all
or
companies are
does not
required
meet
to
their legal
install such channel.
requirements. The employee
This
will be asked
depends
by the authorities to
generally on the
first
number
complete this
of
procedure
employees that
before
are
handling the
employed within the
request.
organization.
For example,
Private
recently we
legal
have had a
entities
case where an
employing
employee
at least
submitted a
50
complaint for
employees have
discrimination
to
via a
install an
global
internal
HR
whistleblowing
hotline.
channel.
Because
And
he
there
was
is an
unhappy
interesting
with the
note
outcome
on
of the
that one,
investigation that
on the
was set up,
calculation
he
of the
initiated
threshold
court
of these
proceedings
50
afterwards.
employees.
The
A new
tribunal,
act will be
however,
adopted very
suspended the
soon,
procedure and obliged the employee
clarifying
to first
that
complete the
companies
formal
have to
internal
verify
procedure in the
each
company
year
before
on the 1st of
continuing the
January
procedure
the
before the
number of
tribunal.
employees employed
In
during
case of
the
toxic
last 4
leadership, the fact that the
quarters.
wrongful
If
conduct is
this
coming from the
exceeds the number
employer
of
or the
50,
management
an internal
creates a
whistleblowing channel
particularly
will have
delicate
to be installed.
situation.
There
And
was some
indeed, the effectiveness
confusion
of an
before on
internal
how this
procedure will
calculation
depend
had
on
to
the
be made
employer's
since reference was
willingness.
made
And in
to
case
the
of toxic
legislation
leadership
on
in the
social
higher ranks,
elections,
there is
in
reason to
which it
fear
is
that the
only
employer will
required
not
to make
implement the
some
measure
calculations
proposed by the
every 4
prevention
years.
advisor.
But it
And
seems
therefore, in
now that
case
the
the
Belgian
employer himself
legislator has cleared
or a
this up.
manager of the
You have
managerial
to
staff,
check
meaning
the
the highest two
threshold
ranks in the
every
company, is
year.
accused of violence, harassment, or
So
unwanted
private
sexual
legal
behavior at
entities of
work,
50
the
up to
prevention advisor
249
is obliged
employees
to call
had
upon the
to
social
install
inspection
this internal
services,
channel by
and
the
that
end of
employees'
last year,
consent to do so should
17
not be
December
obtained in this event.
2023.
So at the
Bigger
start of this episode,
companies
you
employing
mentioned
at least
that employees
250
can turn to
employees
the person of
or
trust as well.
companies
Is
providing
every
financial
employer obliged to
services
appoint a
or
person of
services
trust?
related to
Well,
anti-money
until end
laundering
of
or the
November,
prevention
companies
of
were not
terrorist
obliged to appoint a
financing
person of
had to
trust at
install the
all.
channel by
This
15
changed as from
February
December the
2023.
1st. Employers with at
Regardless
least
the
50
number of
employees have to
employees
appoint one or
employed.
more persons of trust
For
within the
those
company.
companies who have no internal
Companies with
channel
less than
today
50 employees
and
are only
should have,
obliged to
I
do
would
so if all
recommend to take
members of the
action
trade
and
union
set up
delegation would
such
request
internal
so,
channel.
or if
Yes,
there is no
high
trade
time to
union
do that.
delegation, all
And then, of
employees
course, also
request
note in the
so. The
calendar on the
appointment
very
of the
first
person of trust is
day of
subject to the
January
approval of the
to check
company's health and
whether
safety
the threshold
committee,
has been
or if no
exceeded.
such
Okay,
committee
so
exists
now
in the
that we know
company, the
when
trade union
the
delegation
channel
or the
should
employees
be
directly.
installed,
To ensure the
what
person of
should
trust can perform their tasks
it look
free from
like?
bias,
Who should have
the person
access
of
to the
trust cannot be
whistleblowing
appointed
channel?
amongst
And
the
what type
employee
of information
representatives
can be
or the managing
reported?
personnel,
Well,
meaning
at
the
least
highest two ranks
employees
within the
should have
company.
access to
Thank
the
you,
internal
Katrien, for
whistleblowing
briefly
channel,
explaining the actions
but the
employees can take
legislation
if they are
also provides
confronted
the
with
possibility to
toxic leadership.
extend the scope of the
From
channel
a
to
company perspective, however,
consultants,
can an employer
stockholders,
proceed
trainees,
with a dismissal for
voluntary
cause in case
workers,
of
and
toxic
so on.
leadership?
Well,
All who
whether there is
obtain
a
the
sufficient
reported
ground to proceed with a
information in a
dismissal for serious
work-related
cause will need to be
context.
assessed on a
For
case-by-case
companies
basis,
providing
depending on the
financial
gravity of the
services,
facts and whether they
anti-money
can be
laundering
proven.
services, and prevention of
And a
terrorist
serious cause
financing
is a severe
services, the
shortcoming, making the
legislative text
further
is
professional
unclear on the
cooperation
scope of the
between the
whistleblowing
employer and the
policy.
employee
The
definitely
preparatory
and
work seems to
immediately
indicate that
impossible.
these
It is up to the
companies
employer to
should open
decide
up their
when it has
internal
sufficient
channel to
certainty on
information
facts
received
justifying a
outside a
dismissal for
work-related
cause.
context. So
When a
keep
formal
this in mind
procedure
if
for
you fall within
psychosocial
scope of
risk at
this
work is
specific
ongoing,
category of
it is
companies.
therefore recommended to await the
The
outcome
type of
thereof,
breaches that
unless
should
the
be
facts are
reported
already clear
through the
and known to
channel
the
are
person
mentioned in
competent
a
to
list,
dismiss.
such as
Indeed, to
public
be formally valid,
procurement,
the
food
company
and
should
food
proceed with a
safety,
dismissal for cause
consumer
of the
protection,
manager
and
within
so
3
on.
workdays after
Specifically
it
for
obtains
Belgium,
sufficient knowledge
the
of
list
the
mentions
serious
social
shortcoming.
and tax
As to the
fraud
question
as
whether
one of the
toxic
matters
leadership
that
can
can also
qualify
be
as a serious
reported.
shortcoming,
It is
it
always
should be
possible
noted that an
as a company
authoritarian
to
or
expand
inappropriate
the
management
scope
style
of
will
work
generally
and,
not
for instance,
suffice,
also allow
unless, of
for
course, it can be
breaches
seen as violence at
on the
work,
code of
harassment, or
conduct to be
bullying from
reported
the side of
through
the
the internal
manager.
channel.
In case the
But bear in
management style
mind
has a
that
negative impact
whistleblowers
on the
are generally
psychosocial
protected
well-being of
against
certain
retaliation
employees,
measures.
other
So the
corrective measures can
message
also be
has to be
considered
clear
in line
on
with
the
what is
scope
provided
of
for in
this
work rules.
whistleblowing policy.
Of course, providing training
Okay,
or coaching can
understood.
also be
That's
a
a very
possible
clear
outcome of the
recommendation.
investigation
And I wonder,
or an
can it
additional
be
measure
very
imposed on the
simple to set
manager.
up such an
On a
internal
final
channel, or
note,
is
in
it
order
a
to
lengthy and
ensure that
complicated
complainants that
process
their
that all
concerns are
companies have
being
to go
taken
through now?
seriously by the company,
Well,
it is
not at
recommended to
all. A
communicate
company
the
is
outcome
free
of the
to decide on how
investigation
to set up
and
this
also possible
channel.
measures
This
that
can
have
be
been
via
taken to resolve the
email or
issue.
via a website,
Of
such
course, the
as the
company should
whistleblower
be careful
software
in its
website,
communication to ensure
as
the
long
privacy
as
of
it
the
is
manager
done in a
concerned
secure and
and other
protected manner.
stakeholders involved.
There are, however,
It
a
should
number
keep the
of
communication
formalities
general and limited in scope to avoid
confirmation of
GDPR
receipt has to be
breaches.
given within
Only if the
7 days
complainant considers taking
of
legal action, the employer
receipt
is
of their
obliged to provide a
notification.
copy of the
Feedback has
report
to
of
be
the
given
prevention
within the
advisor
3 months
psychosocial
following the
risks at
receipt.
work.
Thank you
And
so much,
the
Katrien. This was very
confidentiality should
interesting.
be
I think it
guaranteed and
gives
so on.
our
It
audience
is
a good
recommended to
overview
include a
what
setup
both
of this
employees and
internal channel
employers
in
can
a
do in
whistleblowing
case of
policy to
toxic
keep
leadership.
flexibility along
Many
the way.
thanks for
To
taking
make
the time to
changes to
record this
this
episode
channel,
of Employment
the
Talks with
rules of
me.
social
I
dialogue
enjoyed it a
also have
lot,
to be
and I hope you
respected.
did too.
And of course,
Thank you, Kato. I did.
all this
See you
has to
next
be in
time.
compliance with the
The
Belgian
last words
language
go out to
requirements
everyone who
regarding the
tuned in for
communication
this
towards
episode of Employment
employees.
Talks.
Just
I
like
hope the
work
content
rules
of this
have to
episode
be
was as
drafted in English
entertaining
and
and
French,
interesting for you
depending
as it
on the
was for me.
location of the
If you have any
implementation
questions in
seat of
relation
the
to the
company,
topic we brought
the
to you today,
communication
of
related to
course, feel free
whistleblowing
to
has
reach
to
out
be
to
conducted
Katrien
in
or to
Dutch or
myself.
French.
If you do not have our
Perhaps
contact
also an
details yet,
important
make
remark
sure
in
to visit
relation to
us at
setting
our
up this
website
whistleblowing channel. Existing
www.lydian.be
reporting
or
lines
simply
remain
reach out through
intact.
LinkedIn.
I refer to the
This
rules
was
in
Employment
the
Talks,
Belgian
a Lydian
Codex on Wellbeing at
podcast.
Work and
If you
the
like this
reporting lines
episode,
for
please make
harassment
sure to subscribe to
involving
this
the
podcast
prevention
wherever you
advisor
listen to your
psychosocial
podcasts.
risks.
And feel free to
This
leave a
is
comment
sometimes
or share it with
confusing for
people
the
you think may
employees
be
who want to
interested too.
report, for instance,
We look forward to
sexual
hearing from you,
transgressive
and we would love
behavior
to welcome you again
and
in
do
2
not know
weeks for
where
our
to
next
address their
episode.
concern. To the prevention
This was
advisor
Employment
or
Talks,
through the
a Lydian
whistleblowing
podcast.
directive.
If you
It is
like
thus
this
recommended
episode, please
to
make sure to
include very
subscribe to
clear
this podcast
guidelines
wherever
in the
you listen to
whistleblowing
your
policy.
podcasts, and feel free
Yes,
to
I
leave a
agree with
comment or
that.
share it with people
That
you
is a
think may be
question actually
interested
that
too.
has been raised many
We look
times by
forward to
clients
hearing
in the
from
past
you,
year.
and we would love to welcome you
And of
again
course,
in
you
2
should
weeks
keep in
for our
mind
next
that there are
episode.
already existing processes in Belgium for that type of complaints. Now, can the company rely on the whistleblowing channel implemented by, for instance, the American group